Welcome, everybody, to the Mansfield Buzz.
Welcome to Mansfield Buzz, Jordan Hurdy in the mix, spotlighting local stories, every episode's a fix, unearthing unique gems, what makes them shine. Tune in, get ready, we're diving into their grind. With Jordan's questions, we reveal what's at the core. Hurdy's tech wizardry, bringing stories to the fore. Together we create, star showcasing what's unique. Mansfield Buzz, where content creation sleek. Calling all business owners and customers to the scene. Discover authentic gems, find the best you've ever seen. Meet the faces behind each unique space. Trust in their stories, find community in this place.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Mansfield Buzz. It is Thursday, it is 2 p.m., and we are on every Thursday from 2 to 3. We always have a local or surrounding community business with us. Today it happens to be Tom Basey. Basey Insurance will be with him in a few minutes. Of course, welcome your host, Hurdy Burke, Jordan Huff, sitting right up there. And Jordan's running the operational thing, so I won't double click over him, which is really cool this time because we get confused about our roles sometimes, but we love to have you guys in the Mansfield Buzz. Jordan, let's see. We are 153 subscribers now. We're still averaging 1.7 to 2,000 views per month, about 45, 50 watch time hours. It fluctuates a little bit depending on the week, but it's no big deal. But guys, right now, do me a favor. If you're on listening and you're coming on live with us, make sure you hit the little thumb that looks like this right under this video on YouTube. Click the like button. And if you haven't, please subscribe. And if you have 5 friends, please send them an email and say, please subscribe to the Mansfield Buzz. We like to build
also
a channel.
text them. That's okay. You can text.
Yeah, you can text and just say hi or get us in the loop and start building the membership. My goal was to have 200 by the end of July. I think we can reach that. And some other good news is I just launched the audio portion on Spotify, and I went back and did our first ever with Arnie from musicians, from Rock Stars of Tomorrow, Mansfield, Arnie Newman, and he was our first show ever, which was fantastic, right? So I did his audio, so it's up in Spotify, and it'll be on Apple in the next couple of days. So we'll have an audio version for you guys to go to, but we want you to stick right here for the live show. So Jordan, we've got our exclusive sponsor, which is Liberty Tax Defenders, and we're gonna jump in. Oh, by the way, let me back up, Jordan. Go back up to my email if you would. Okay. So here's how you get on the show. First of all, we're booked all the way into middle of May. And I just had 3 more people tell me they want the other dates in May. So we're really starting to work on June now. Nice. But if you want to be on our show, you can email me at hurdy@hurdyburke.com. The email's right there. Also be on the archive. So when you hear this and see that, all you have to do is all you have to do in the subject line is put we want to be on this fantastic Mansfield Buzz show. Okay. And we want Jordan to ask us the questions. That's all you have to put in. No, I'm just kidding. But anyhow. So we're having fun. So Liberty Tax Defenders, right? And Jordan, I'm going to go ahead and play our icebreaker. We jump into that. Then we'll start having a chance to talk to Tom and get his great expertise on health insurance. So we'll be right back. Woo! All right, so we are Liberty Tax Defenders, and they gave us their disclaimer. And since they wrote it, we want to read this. It'll take a few minutes, but we are Liberty Tax Defenders, your premier tax resolution firm. We work every day to help hardworking Americans keep more of their money out of the hands of overzealous bureaucrats. We help our clients solve problems with back taxes, unfiled tax returns, payroll, and trust fund issues. And let me throw in a Hurdyism here. If you get a letter from the IRS, don't put it in a drawer. Don't ignore it. Call these guys. They've saved over 1 million. It's actually 2 million in assets. Yeah, that I still hadn't changed the wording on this, Jordan, but it's 2 million in assessed taxes and penalties. So if you need help, they're local Liberty Tax Defenders, Brad Horton, Wade Dennis, and Fred. By the way, Brad is the mayor of Kenningdale, Texas, but he also for 15 years wrote all the top end code. Jordan, I'm right about this, correct? For the IRS.
Road code
and so
for the IRS.
what better person to have help you with tax problems than somebody that actually helped with the code? Okay, that's all I got to say. So
who knows the rules better than the one who wrote them?
That's right. 817-995-5008, Liberty Tax Defenders. And I'm going to go ahead and play a quick video clip of them, and then we're going to get right with Tom.
I don't agree with the IRS's position. What are my options?
Well, you can tell them to pound sand,
I love it.
which so few people do this. Don't just agree. They're wrong so often. You have rights. You can appeal it. The appeal must be made within 30 days of the date that the IRS has made a determination. You file a formal notice of appeal and you present your case before appeals. And they consider how much is it going to cost the IRS to go to court. At the end of the day, what's another 12 to 18 months if you save yourself 50 grand in the long run, which is, I think that's being conservative.
All right. So there we go. So Tom, welcome to the Mansfield Buzz. And this is where we get to find out a little bit about, you and telling us about your products and services you offer in this world. And you're in what I consider to be the part of the world that's complicated for a lot of folks. And you're going to clear it up today and help us with this. And your expertise is welcome. So Jordan.
It's great to see you guys too. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. What'd you think so far? Pretty cool.
Yeah, sure. It's
there you
great
go.
Production. You're having a good time.
Okay. All right.
We're here, Tom. This is going to be fun. You have a lot of good knowledge that we're going to dive into, and I'm going to learn a lot. And, I got, selfish reasons because, my mom's getting, she's in this space, and I know a lot of my friends have parents that are getting there. So we're going to get into a lot of really, really useful knowledge. But first, I want to ask you, you have some cool things you do, huh? So for an icebreaker, tell us about an event you recently attended.
So that's the thing. I think everybody needs to get out of their comfort zone now and again, right? It's good for you. It's like lifting weights, Jordan. And so I was approached a weekend or so ago, said, hey, we've got a DJ, but we need an MC and he needs to speak Spanish. Will you do this? And so I MC'd a quinceañera right in Kennedale a couple of weeks. And so I'd never done that before. Now I've attended plenty, right? But it's like if you've attended a wedding, well, you're going to go and officiate the wedding. But I went ahead and did that. And so I had a good time. So I'm fluent in Spanish. I went up there and I pulled it off. And so that was the fun out of the comfort zone. Yeah.
That's awesome. How was it like to just be in front of the crowd with a microphone?
Well, fortunately, that's the thing. So it was a professional DJ. So this guy was good. And so he had the whole setup, and he would basically say, and now here comes the lady of the hour with her parents, and we're going to have the first waltz. And I would say, damas y caballeros, un gran aplauso. Ya llega la persona, la festejado. So I would just basically mirror what he would say, but I did a good job. And then there's the one section because there's the whole thing about, and quinceañeras can vary slightly, but there's the one thing where she's doing the waltz while her dad goes away, and then one after another, there's kind of these guys that come up.
Cool.
He didn't even know what to do. So I just so there was a period of time where I was like, I don't know what's going on, and I would just kind of say, the next gentleman's coming up, a round of applause for this guy. He's taking advantage of her, so whatever the case is. So I had a good time. That didn't sound good in English, but that's what I said in Spanish. And then she's taking advantage of the opportunity to dance with her. Sorry.
Yes, exactly. That's awesome, dude. That is so cool. Talk about fun. Getting out of your comfort zone. That is great. Yeah. And that's awesome. I bet you get it a lot, but like a lot of people would have not guessed, you're fluent in Spanish.
Correct. And the thing is, my wife's family's from Mexico. She's not white. So yeah, so it happens all the time. I've lived in a Mexican house. My mother-in-law lives with me. So that means I'm eligible for sainthood, but also that I live in a Spanish-speaking home. So I'm fluent in Spanish as a result.
Oh man, I can relate. I can totally relate. So That's awesome, dude. That wow, that blew my mind. That is so cool. Good for you.
Yeah, had a good time.
So now let's dive into it, all right? Like, tell us a little bit about yourself, and let's get the audience get to know you a little bit. We already know you speak Spanish, and you are not shy to jumping on new adventures.
Right. So I've lived somewhere between on I-20 between 360 and 820, somewhere in the South Arlington area for 30-something years. I was actually born and raised in Austin, but I've been up here a long time. You mentioned pre-production that you had a kid on my son graduated from Martin High School. So I'm here. Oh, cool. I'm here in the area. Okay. I've lived here. I'm a recovering engineer. My undergraduate engineering, I spent 15 years at Motorola. While I was working here in the area, I did an MBA at UT Arlington. I switched to medical device in 2010. But I mean, pre-COVID, every job I had, I was driving an hour commute, and I wanted out of that. I was a project manager, so I wanted out of the commute. I wanted to be able to control my time, and I wanted to reduce the stress of being a project manager. Always there's constant deadlines and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I did the obvious thing at UT Arlington. If you have an undergraduate degree, you can get certified to teach. So actually, fun fact, I substitute taught at every high school in Mansfield and every high school in Arlington while still in corporate America, just to kind of get a feel. Is that something I can really do? Mm-hmm. And so I took all the coursework. The only thing I had left was student teaching. Everything else you could do online. And I did that. And I was even signed up at Mansfield High, where I'd already taught, to do my student teaching. And then this insurance stuff fell into my lap. And so and by the way, my wife retired just last year from 30-something years in Fort Worth ISD. And so she wasn't on board with the plan. So a combination of her not being on board with the plan and me doing this and this insurance stuff on my lap, I'm an accidental insurance broker, but I'm 7 years in and I love it, because at the end of the day, I do what we do now. I just help people. I take an educative approach. I help people understand it, and I'm just helping people. That's what I do all day. And now I don't have the stress of project management, having to get this thing done in 6 months, get this thing done. Have we shipped it yet? What are the prototypes of? So I'm having a good time.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I feel you, dude. Like project managers, they have all the pressure to complete the project, but there are so many human variables they have no control over.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And it's you end up being a people manager, and oh my God, also so different hats you got to wear.
Mm-hmm.
I can see
and
this
frequently don't report to you. In many instances, I might have been in an engineering department. There's marketing and quality and manufacturing. They don't even report to me. So it is cliche. It's herding cats. You're trying to get this big project done. People don't report to you. It's challenging.
Yeah.
Yep.
All the responsibility, none of the authority. I mean, that's smiles like corporate America,
Mm-hmm.
I can totally relate. So this is, and I love how you put on your question, the second act that you kind of stumbled in on accident. But can you give us a little bit of what do you like? What are your most like striking differences? Because I love the journey and transformation that former W-2s go through when they go into entrepreneurship and become a business owner. Like that, those two worlds are vastly different. So I'd love to hear your take on it.
Well, and so you're exactly right. And so that is the biggest challenge. And so I benefited a lot from corporate America. So I grew up in the ranks there. I was a senior program manager at one point, and there are good aspects to process and quality and stuff, but there are also constraints, right? But I was, at the end of the day, even as a senior project manager, senior program manager, I was still an employee. So I was getting a paycheck, and I had to ask if I wanted to take a vacation, and I didn't have to pursue clients. I didn't have to find work. It was there given to me. So that was the biggest transition. To become my own business owner, I had to learn. I was already wearing a lot of hats, right? But I had to wear different hats and/or more hats, and so that was the single biggest transition, to change from a W-2 employee to a business owner. And it was a mindset. So I spent a lot of my time listening to podcasts and stuff like that. Really, even though I had an MBA, it was an employee MBA in a certain way, right? I was working on marketing and strategy, but from a corporate thing. So now I had to learn how to be a business owner. So I actually had to do self-education in programs just like this. And that was the biggest single transition for me.
That's really cool. And thank you for that piece of advice, because a lot of the people we interview in the podcast are, it's typically their second go around. Mm-hmm. And it's that transition from the W-2 to the being a business owner, and just the mindset shifts and the educational part of it is huge, because
or they got forced into it, right, Jordan? Either way.
Yeah, absolutely. And just that education now, because you like in the corporate world, you learn a lot, you get really a lot of depth, but it's very narrow. And then you get in the business world, and now there's so much to cover. And now you have a lot of knowledge in an aspect, and then the other, nothing. You're like, oh wow, I'm back to school, except now I'm doing it on the run. So that really is a good segue, because you mentioned you take an educative approach to what you do, and I find it interesting too that is how you've been able to grow within your businesses, by educating yourself as well. So you're really you get a clarity on the power of education and how it can help you, guide you.
Agreed. I call myself a lifelong learner. I'm a lifelong. I really think we all should be, but I mean, I label myself that way intentionally. Yes.
Yeah, you're a learn-it-all, not a know-it-all.
That sounds good too.
That knows it all.
Well, you know more, but you never know everything.
I
I really do know a lot about this thing. You spend just like
Right.
anything, humans will get experts in some areas. So yeah, I really have developed a lot of expertise, and I can help people in certain areas. But yeah, there's plenty. I feel good at this stage of my life. I'm going to say I have no idea. I simply don't know. I'll defer to someone else. Ask someone else, or can we find someone else? Yeah, so I don't know everything. No.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but also know who to call. It's it's worth its
yeah.
own weight in gold, because we don't have all the answers, but we can refer people to the ones that do. So I'm pretty sure after this podcast, I'm going to know who to refer to when it comes to questions about healthcare and Medicare, which is
You'll feel better too. I claim you're going to be the judge. I claim to be able to explain this in easy to digest terms. So you're actually even going to know more about it. You'll feel good about it. You can call me if you have a problem. But my goal is to make you feel better. You're going to feel empowered to talk. You won't be mystified by it.
Yeah, and that's phenomenal. Which we should really jump onto it, right? Because Medicare is complex. It's got its own set of rules. You go from dealing with the just health insurance in general is confusing,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go into now this like program that is half government run, half like elected, and it's just for lack of a better word, a doozy, right? So I'd love to ask you for young listeners that are here with us and that will be here in the recording. Can you tell us what Medicare is and what are the options that you guys offer, and just sort of like how to manage it, right? Because for example, my mom is in Medicare, but I wish I could help her, but when I see the stuff she's dealing with, I'm like, oh God, that doesn't even look like the stuff I have to elect.
Well, but we'll talk about that, and that's the thing. This conversation will help you because one day you will. We're hoping and praying we all get to be Medicare age. It'll help you, right? So when you get there, and yet it helps you now, because if you understand what your parents do, you can help them as well. Yeah. So what I would offer is most people get their jobs. Get their health insurance from their employer. That's what most people know. But that's the thing. 65, you become eligible for Medicare. Now, you don't have to get on the Medicare system if you like your stuff from work. Most people don't. There's a small subset of people that either their employer is paying for all or so much of it that they'll stay. But most people, when they turn 65, whether they're going to work or not, they're going to go ahead and take advantage of Medicare. And what it is it's a federal government health insurance program. And that's the thing. It was developed in the 60s. Most people retired around 65. And so that's what it was. So it's like good news when you leave your employer, it's your solution. So you can get on Medicare. Now, the good news there, it is complexity and or not. Actually, it's wide rather than deep. Well, no, it's deep rather than wide, I guess, to use your analogy. But my point is, all you do is you get a red, white, and blue card with your name. And it used to have the Social Security number. Now it's separate because they recognize, it's not good to have the social around on that thing. So there's some letters and numbers, but we call it the Medicare ID. And then there's only two other dates. There's the Part A and the Part B effective date. So you get this card from somebody. Most people, your Part A, which an oversimplification is hospitalization coverage, that's mostly paid when they're taking that FICA tax out of your paycheck. Like, when I was in working corporate America, I didn't know what that was. That FICA has your Social Security and your Medicare stuff. So Part A typically is paid for, but then when you turn 65, they're going to turn on not hospitalization, outpatient. That is the stuff that when you're not going to the hospital, if you're going to the doctor, if you're getting some lab work done, if you have a surgery, but it's not in the hospital, outpatient, all that's Part B. You say, I'm going to stop retiring. I'd like to get on Medicare. And they'll say, yes, sir, or madam, great. How do you want to pay for that? Because you do have to pay for Part B. You already paid for Part A, but to turn that on. For most people, that costs $184 thereabouts right now. Now, you can go to Medicare.gov, or you can do a search engine to find out IRMAA, IRMAA, to find out exactly what it is. Because if you make a lot of money, then you'll pay some more for that. But many people pay. Their Part A is already paid, and Part B, you get that, and that'll cost $180. So you've got that red, white, and blue card. Now, I'm going to stop right here. That's the good news is you're in the Medicare system and you've got health insurance from the government. The bad news is that's really not enough. You've got that, and that's good. Number one, it doesn't cover medications, and they will actually penalize you if you don't get some kind of drug plan. And like you, and without getting into the details of that, I'm just leave it at that. You can get penalized. So I recommend getting a drug plan right away once you start it. And so, you're walking around with that red, white, and blue card. You want at a minimum to get a drug plan. Many people will then get a supplement because that red, white, and blue card right now, if you go to the hospital, well, there's a $1,600 deductible, for example, if you walk in there. If you're just going to the doctor, there's a 20% copay on all your Part B stuff after you hit a deductible. So my point is, it doesn't pay for everything. You got it. So really, prior to 2000, what most people would do is they would get a Medicare supplement and they would get a drug plan, and if you do that, particularly if you get the most thorough supplements there, you have some real thorough coverage. Your cost of care will be negligent because, and so that's good news. And that's traditional Medicare plus a supplement. Prior to 2000, that was only did. Then when around 2000, the Advantage plans came out. An Advantage plan is an alternative, and that kind of feels more like your traditional health insurance from your government. From your employer, because it's from one of the major carriers. We can list off all the big major health insurance carriers. They'll offer you the supplement and they'll offer you the drug plan, or you can get on an Advantage plan from them. And there are pros and cons. I want to stop a little bit because I don't want to. Your audience your eyes may be glazing over, but that's the thing. My message to you is there's two different things you can choose: either a Medicare supplement and a drug plan, or an Advantage plan once you get into the system.
So Tom, to back up just a little bit, because you went through a lot there. So that $185, a lot of people, when they get their Social Security, that becomes an automatic deduction out of that retirement fund or that Social Security fund. So you don't ever really see that come out. You could pay for it out of pocket, but
correct.
But if you don't take your Social Security till a later time, but once you start taking your Social Security, your Medicare at the right age is going to come right out of that check, right?
Correct. And so some people will choose that. That is an option. You can turn them both on.
Or you can just pay it and bill it monthly, but it's easier just take it out of that check. That's what I do. So, but that is
many people. I'm not allowed. So I can talk about other health insurance later, but I'm not allowed to use the word FREE because that reason. It's not FRE because you may not see it, but they take it out of FICA and then they're taking out of Social Security. So it's not FREE, the stuff you got going on.
It's pay. You got to pay for A and B or for that part of it. So either way, you're going to write a check or take it out of your Social Security. And then the other thing you mentioned, which is really cool, because I'm on this, I can throw some lingo back at you. And that is, I'm on a supplemental program that I chose. I didn't really go into the Advantage program, but I chose one. And I can honestly tell you, when you throw the supplemental, the prescription program and your Medicare card at a doctor, it's really amazing how accepted, without even question, those cards are. You hand them to somebody and you're fine, you're great. You usually walk out of the doctor's office and maybe get a small bill 2 months down the road, right? It's amazing. So anyhow, just thought I'd throw that 2 cents in.
Well, so to piggyback on that, if someone goes that route, that costs you more per month, but the good news is the cost of care is very limited. So I have a cousin. She lives in Fort Worth. She had spinal surgery. Her surgery didn't cost very minimal, to your point, but that's because that supplement is designed to supplement or pay the things that card doesn't. So that's what you do. You hand them both in. Say, here you go. Here's my Medicare card. Bill them stuff. Don't come back at me if you got something else. Go to the supplement, and so that carries. So that is good. So I've got the cousin on that side. My mother-in-law, who's with me, she is on the Advantage side. So we can talk about that too. But you're right, Herdy. The people that get on the Med Sup side, you hit the other thing. They like it. You can go anywhere Medicare is accepted. So they like the non-network. They don't have to worry about HMO, PPO. You don't have to. That's because you've got it. You can anywhere Medicare is accepted. You can use you can go and seek care. Yeah,
and it's worth asking when you get sent to a specialist or something just to make sure. But they all are, which is really cool. The other thing is, and I'm sure you'll talk about this later. Just throw it in. I have a supplement on top of a supplement. And so what do I mean by that? I have an accidental policy. I have a cancer, heart attack policy that's on top of those things that can pay additional bills. Is that, and I guess that's a personal choice for people, but I chose that route myself. Okay. All right. Done.
Well, that's a great discussion too. But I do want to talk about Advantage plans a little bit, but I want to let you guys kind of dictate the questions, check on your input, but I want to cover Advantage.
Yeah, I think you need to explain it. I think you need to explain Advantage plans, because I think it's really confusing when people get bombarded on TV seeing that they think they're seeing a government when they put up the Medicare card and make it look like it's a government program when in fact it's not. So yes, please dive into the Advantage plan.
Now,
And
before we
they're-
go down, I wanted to
Sure.
recap a little bit because we're moving fast. So you've covered, we have our Medicare, which part of it we pay into, is like all of us that had a W-2 see it come out of your out of your
Mhm.
taxes, and as a business owner, you got to go back and pay for
Mhm.
that with your employment taxes or payroll taxes.
Mhm.
So you get that part covered, but then you also pay into the Part B, which is what covers your doctors and that kind of a
Yes.
space. And then there's the additional Medicare supplement and Medicare Advantage plan. So is that almost like a third component, or is that a subcomponent of the B portion?
It's one or the other. It's one or the other. So to your point, A and B come from the government. They call this the alphabet soup. A and B are the only two things you can get from the government.
Okay.
Then you can add, and there's a lot of different letters. There's an N plan. The F plan is no longer available unless
Right.
you turn 65. But a G plan is the most thorough coverage you can get. It covers almost everything. There's a $250 deductible, but it covers almost everything that your Medicare card doesn't cover. So you get the supplement. But the thing about Medicare supplements, they do not cover drugs. So then you need to add a D as in drug, a D plan. So typically, if you're going to stay on that side, it's one or the other. You're going to do that's what Herdy says he does. My cousin, they have their Medicare card. They have a Medicare supplement card to pay for that, which Medicare doesn't, and they got a drug plan. That's the only way you could do it until 2000. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you about my mother-in-law. Remember, I'm eligible for sainthood because my mother-in-law has lived with me for 20 years or whatever. She's gone the Advantage plan. And to Herdy's remark, there's a lot of people on TV hawking those Advantage plans. And there are pros and cons. And I'm here to set that straight for you because there really are. The things they say on TV, they're largely true. In fact, they're always true, but there's caveats. I'll explain those to you. And then funny, there's certain things they don't mention. Okay. So this is the thing. For one thing, those same major carriers, list your favorite 3 to 6 that you like. They all offer an Advantage plan as well. You can get the supplement. You can get the Advantage plan. When you get that thing, it's more like the stuff you get from work because it is an HMO or a PPO. That means suddenly networks are in that. You have to see someone, if a doctor's in network, they will accept that plan. But the good news is, in large metropolitan areas, that's okay. You can find plenty of doctors. Maybe not everybody, but my point is you can have that thing. That card has a $0 deductible. It may have some deductible for the drug plan, but it has an out-of-pocket maximum. And so, for example, I'm going to many of them are this way. If you have an HMO from one of those major carriers, $0 deductible, it'll cost you $0 to see your primary care physician. If you go to a specialist, it may cost you $35, $40. If you have to get an MRI, though, it may cost you $200, something like that. So now here's the thing: what they don't mention on all the TV shows, all the sports guys and all the entertainers that tell you about them, and I'm telling you, I love these plans, but it's important that you understand. If you go to the hospital on one of those plans, you will have a copay, and that copay will be approximately $300 every day that you're there for the first 5 or 6 days or so. Then it'll drop to $0. But now I don't want to scare you off from these plans yet. It's important that you understand that. So when I sit with a person, that's the thing. I say educative approach. I show them one or the other. First, I show you how the Medicare supplement works. We've already talked about it. Then I show you this Medicare Advantage plan. Those plans, the Medicare Advantage plans, the Advantage they have some dental benefits, maybe some vision benefits, maybe some hearing aids. They have a $0 gym membership off in it. They have over-the-counter. They have all kinds of bells and whistles that are great. But I'm telling you, and I love those things. But it's important, but if you go to the hospital on that plan, it's $300 every day for the first 5 or 6 days. And so at a high level, if I wanted to, this is an oversimplification, I could say the Medicare supplement is paying me now and the Medicare Advantage is paying me later. No, they work differently. And so those plans, and so the thing is, the G plan, like I enrolled someone in a G plan yesterday in Tarrant County, and he paid $111. So once you turn 65, that Medicare supplement the G plan cost him $111, and then he enrolled in a drug plan for about $20. Now the drug plan, here's the thing, it varies depending on what your list of drugs are. There's some real expensive drug plans. If you have expensive drugs, you might pay an expensive drug plan to keep those down, but that's a whole nother discussion. But so the gentleman I signed up, he's going to have very little cost of care during the year because he's got a G plan, the most thorough one that's available, and he spent an additional $130. Had he done the Advantage plan, he could have, and he would have had all those bells and whistles. But if he goes to the hospital, he's going to pay $300 a day for the first 5 or 6 days. However, what I like on those is the Advantage plans typically do cost $0. So I do like that. So an Advantage plan is a nice low-cost alternative to Medicare Supplement, but you just need to understand how they work. And so my job is to let you understand it. You know which one you should sign up for? You should sign up for the one you feel most comfortable with.
There you go. Period. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Pay me now or pay me later, so to speak. But they're really good. I'm on the G, just so everybody knows. It's on the listening audience, and I'm very happy with it. And my premium's goes up a little bit every year, but
It does.
For 70 years old, paying a little bit over $100, I'm not upset. So yeah,
And the cost of care will be very little. You
the
almost
cost
won't
of
get
care is very little.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's yeah.
So you have more thorough coverage than really anybody in the metro. Just about that's the best you can do.
That is correct. That is correct.
Actually, I'm supposed to use the word BST, but I was talking.
And it makes you feel but it makes you feel good when you get older, to know that when you walk in for the specialist or whatever you're having to get checked, right, that you've got all that and you don't have to worry about this big, huge bill coming down the pike, which is really cool. Yeah, it's just peace of mind.
Yeah,
but they don't have those bells and whistles, so you can add some of those on. You can add a
which I did
vision plan. You can do that too. But what I'm also getting at, so I don't want to undersell the Advantage plan because I do like them. I like all their bells and whistles, and I like the fact they're $0. But it's just important that people understand the differences.
Good.
So I enroll plenty of people in Advantage plans too. But it's the important thing. As a broker, I've got these tools, so I can put in all your list of meds, and I can put in all your doctors, and I can show you. We can look and see if all your doctors are in network. Then an HMO plan is great. What if sometimes there's one or two there's not? Well, then you can do a PPO, which allows. My mother-in-law has a PPO actually, and so she can go out of network if you want. What happens is there's a higher out-of-pocket maximum on most HMO plans. The out-of-pocket maximum is around $4,000, which is not bad. I mean, that's terrible, but I mean, if you have a bad year in your hospital a couple of times, but you're only going to pay $4,000, that's pretty good. If you go to the PPO to have the flexibility to go out of network to other doctors, that out-of-pocket maximum can go $8,000-$10,000.
And Tom, I would say the thing you didn't touch on a whole lot was prescription side. There are you can look up the price of medication and see if it's a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and as you go up in the tiers, it's more expensive. Okay, so if you can get away with tier 1 stuff, you're in good shape, basically. So good.
I sent out an email to all my clients in the past month or so. There are a couple of websites because sometimes not every carrier covers every drug. And
That's
so actually
correct.
I do endorse taking a look at, so if you got an expensive med, if your plan won't cover it, you can look at the ones, there's a famous one, and then there's not as famous, but coming, one of our local entrepreneurs here, former Dallas Mavs owner, he actually is working on that too. So there's a couple places you can go to their websites and shop. And so what I do is most of the plans that I sell will take care of most drugs, but worst case is you can go to one of those third-party things and get a good solution as well.
That is correct.
But to your point, I type all your meds in and I'll show you. Sometimes one carrier versus the other will have a better.
It makes a big difference. Yeah, it makes a big difference.
I actually want to talk a little bit more about that because it's a complicated. I mean, just like 20 minutes into this conversation, I think everybody can see that it is it's a complex space. But you have a way to simplifying it. So I'd love to, if you could walk us a little bit of how you go about helping people navigate this Medicare space.
Sure. So I do meet people online like this. I have a Medicare client in Hawaii, so I will help online if someone wants. I will go to the coffee shop. If you want, I will go to your house or we can meet a local coffee shop. But really, I sit down, number one, and I ask you for those two lists, the list of doctors and the list of medications. So and that's the thing, it really is tailoring. That's the word I use. Just like if I go to your house and I take your measurements, right? Because the same solution, it's not necessarily optimal one versus the other. I make sure that you understand it. And that's the thing, Jordan, you mentioned your mom. That's the thing, really. Sometimes I call it detective work. You ought to go and check with your mom and see which one she has. He's already defined to determine if she has an Advantage plan or does she has a Medicare supplement and the drug plan. And understand that you kind of study for yourself. But I help you understand, one, the differences between those, and then considering your doctors and your medications, you get to choose which one you're going to do. But I have, as broker tools, I can look across multiple carriers and I put in all the doctors, and I can show you a nice report. I have a tool it basically puts a green square around every doctor's name that's in network. It leaves it gray if they're not in network. So you can just kind of look at it and see who's in network and who's not for all the doctors you give me. And I've done that for sometimes 10, 12 doctors. A couple of years ago in Grand Prairie, it was actually, no, it was more than that because in COVID, I went to the lady's house. She and her husband were there. I have my mask on. I didn't go inside. And I asked them to they don't have a list of meds. So I took a photo of each of their, she had 23 meds. And so if nothing else, I gave her a list of her medications. She had it then. But having that list of meds, then I shopped it. And depending on which carrier you went with, it was going to be $500 a month difference in the pricing of the drugs. That's because she had 23 meds too. But my point is, I can shop it. So that's what I do is I understand your needs and I shop it across multiple carriers and I show it to you and you pick which one you feel most comfortable with.
What a nice process. That's perfect. Yep.
That's really, what would it look like if it was easy? That's basically what you described.
And sometimes it is easy, right? Sometimes if you only have one doctor and no meds, well, then it gets easy, but it can be complicated.
I mean, yeah, like if you're in that situation, yeah, it's not difficult, but if you're not, and as we age, our prescription list grows and grows. So yeah, that's phenomenal. That's great customer service. And I know it could be overwhelming. I mean, dude, like going over there, taking a picture and I mean, if you said this was around COVID time, like you couldn't copy paste text from pictures back then. So you literally took a picture and typed that manually.
Exactly. I built it back then. And I sent it to them. Here's your list of your meds.
That's awesome. Now, I wanted to ask you something that we didn't talk about. When you sign up into Medicare, you're automatically assigned an agent, aren't you?
No, that's a great question. So that's the thing. So I'm an independent broker, and there are people who are captive. They may work for just one of the carriers, and there's different ways to do it. And actually, so Medicare is administered by the federal government. It really is. And so when you sign up, you can either go to Medicare.gov or you can dial 1-800-Medicare. These days, actually, Social Security and Medicare, they're kind of a single login for both of them. So you can actually even potentially get there from the Social Security. But my point is you can do it online, over phone, or in person. But in each instance, you're really dealing with the government, and they're really just doing Part A and Part B. To get the confusingly, Advantage plans are called Part C, but whether you're going to get the Advantage plan or if you're going to get the G and by the way, you can get those. The gentleman I mentioned, he went with one carrier for his Part G, and then he went a different carrier for his drug plan. So we can pick and choose, but you're dealing with those carriers. So you're either going to deal with one of those carriers and or one of their captive agents, or you can deal with an independent person that kind of. And that's the thing. I do that. I endorse that. But I have a cousin who's captive. In fact, she was captive. She went independent for a while, and she went back captive because she liked that. Now, she's in Louisiana. Certain companies have more. They have very thorough solutions in some states versus others. But I just like the independent. I like people to look across multiple companies. So you're going to deal with a captive agent or an independent agent when you pick your Advantage plan or your supplement or your drug plan.
So for somebody listening that, just kind of ran through the way you help them navigate this, which, I mean, you're doing really a lot of the work for them, which is what ultimately a lot of us want. And they want to work with you. It's just as simple as just giving you a call and then you can just take it over from there.
Correct. And that's the thing. I'm not the only person that does that. You find an agent, talk to someone you want to have a good rapport with them, feel good about them, and you want them to do a good job for it. But at the end of the day, I can just you can just reach out to me. You can search engine me, Tom Basey Insurance. I'm on all social media, but I'm receptive. I love to have these conversations all day. So they can reach out to me and I will help them decide. Now at the end, to your point though, when it's time to sign up, that's another thing. These days, we can fill out the application all electronically and then they can sign it either in person or actually you can do it by text and email. You really can't even, that's what I'm saying. My client that I have in Hawaii, I've never been in the same room as her. So it can even be done electronically.
Yeah, so I'll back up. I didn't know Tom. If I'd known Tom back when I first signed up for all this, I would have used him. But I have a broker like you, Tom, that set me up and went through the same process. And so I will tell people, you will take stress off yourself if you work directly with the broker agent because you will get tired of trying to call. that GOV side, you will totally hang up. Call an agent and a broker and let them take you through it.
And actually, every year, you ideally, if you get set up, you never have to change again. Ideally, but as we mentioned, medication. If one medication can make a difference, So
You
my
can
point is
change.
potentially
You can change that. Yeah.
that, and my point is every year, some people change every year. In other words,
Right.
if you're, and in fact, what if your medication doesn't change? You can shop it though, because to your point, Herdy, if they move a certain drug you're on from tier 2 to tier 3, then there's a difference. So in other words, it's good to shop it every year.
Yep.
And then make a change if it makes sense. Don't need to make a change if it's working for you, but if you're going to save some money, that's a good idea. Or if there's some new feature, like on the Advantage plan side, there's all that. Sometimes the amount of dental coverage, it will be significantly bigger. And you're like, I think I'm going to this year. You might switch to a plan that has more coverage, whatever your rationale is. But you can switch every year your drug plan or your Advantage plan. I don't recommend switching the supplement. You could, but that's underwriting stuff. But
no,
typically you leave
your G and stuff alone and all that in your Advantage. But I will tell you, the drug thing is always worth looking at year to year, because some of the tier 1s even had a small price, and then you might find another carrier that has a less monthly premium and get the tier 1s for no charge. So you can shop it, and you can change that without the agent. But if you want to, or just call and get their advice and make sure you're picking the right one. There might be something hidden in it you don't know about, right? So
that's a good way to give an agent a test drive. Just call them and see do they answer your question. Do they answer it in a way that you can understand it? Are they pleasant? Are they professional? Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Agree. Perfect.
Oh, that's great. And that's good to know too. So your supplemental you want to leave alone for as long as possible, because that just is best to keep stationary. But your drug plan, you really want to shop around to just be able to save you money depending on how things move around. I know a lot of people are on thyroid medication, and that one actually went up. I think it's the desiccated thyroid that went up significantly in as of the last maybe 3 years. I know my mom mentioned it, and it was like a substantial spike. It went from being nothing to being around $100. And so is that, for example, an example of when you probably should start shopping around for new drug plans, is whenever you have a medication that spikes?
Definitely, that's an example. But there's an extreme one you said it there. So I'm going to use. So I try to limit my use of specific brands or companies or whatever, right? Not intentionally. But there's some people find, and this is what I don't even understand all this, right? When it comes to pharmaceuticals, some people will say, I've tried the generic and it doesn't work for me. You know what I mean? And supposedly the formulation is the same. Maybe they're not, I don't know. But so Synthroid, then there's some legacy ones. There's a drug called Synthroid that some people swear by, and that's kind of being sunset too. So to your point, the life cycle of these pharmaceuticals, they have big impact, but that's the good news. You can literally shop it. So and those, whatever some people say, I don't care. Yeah, and that's the thing. If you only have if you have tier 1s, they may be costing you $0 each year. You don't care. But the higher it up it is, shop that and be aware of it, and even shop it in advance. But yes, it can be expensive, and so the pharmaceuticals that have fancy names and have commercials on TV, that's expensive, right? They paid some big marketing exec to do a research project to come up with that name that no one can say. Those things are expensive, and sometimes I shopped one a couple of years ago. One of the ones for one of the skin conditions, I don't know, is eczema or what it is. And only one carrier here in the area was covering it. So the lady that, which one she went, the one that was covering it, because it's going to be thousands of dollars. So yes, it's very sensitive and or important or not. That's the thing. Some people are not interested in what we're saying right now because fortunately they've only got a couple of low cost generics. That's great, but when you have an expensive one, it's super important.
All right, so Tom, I'm going to throw another monkey wrench at you. Okay. So in 2024, you could have, and I'm not there, but I have a mother that was there. You have a big expense of how much medication you're allowed to get before you go into this next level. And I don't want to get complicated, but they changed that in 2025 and kind of made that easier, correct?
That's correct.
All right.
So so what you're talking about, and that's the thing, we're kind of dancing around it because it is complicated. But I'll use the word donut hole. Some people know it as the donut hole. Another one is known as the coverage gap. And that has, as we talked about, some legislation has moved that some. And so the coverage gap, so you would pay some co-payment for your drug. And then at some point when the cost of your drugs, not your copay, but what the cost is, because the plan's really paying for it. So in other words, if you had if you had one expensive drug, or if you had 10 drugs that are expensive, if their cost was $1,000, you might have only been paying $100 for that, but the cost was $1,000. once the cost of your meds made some number that each year they kind of set it. For the past couple of years, it's around $4,000. Once it was in that, then you're in the coverage gap or the donut hole. And when that happened to you, instead of paying your copay, you had to pay 25% of the medication. Now, the good news is, I guess, was that if you got to catastrophic, once that cost of your meds got to like $8,000, then you got out of the donut hole into the catastrophic side. Then you would only pay 5%. That's the way it was. But to your point, it was actually 2024. They actually got rid of the donut hole, and so but it's so that it's complicated. But the good news is, as long as they keep changing things so that it benefits the consumer, we should be happy about that. And so that's the thing. So the donut hole went away for the first time.
Yeah, I just thought I'd bring it up because it was a real thing for people.
But the same thing as my previous. If you have cheap drugs, you never got there. If expensive drugs, what the worst scenario was, you got into the coverage gap and didn't get out. If suddenly you had to pay 25% for your drug for the rest of the year, well, and if you got there in June, that was terrible because then you're paying 25% of this expensive drug for the half of the year. Sometimes you'd get out of it. Sometimes you had an expensive cancer drug. Sometimes you'd get in and out of it in the same month. It's so expensive. So you're out of there and now you only have to pay 5%. So we're just depending on your cost of your meds and where they set the two lines in and out of the donut holes when you get out. That was complicated. That it used to be my most common question, but now they've gotten rid of it. That's helped.
Yeah, I just thought I'd let everybody know they kind of got rid of that. So you're in better shape you were. Okay. All right, Jordan.
We're trying to keep up here. This is it's wild how multi-layered it is. But I also wanted to ask you, you have obviously you master around the Medicare space. Do you carry also other kinds of health insurance?
I do, and so I'll touch briefly around that. So number one, we all know, I'll help somebody when they're turning 65. Or by the way, you can actually get on. Typically, if you're permanently disabled after 24 months, no matter what your age, then you're eligible for Medicare. So yes, I help Medicare people. Besides that, if you lose your job, well, then I help people, whether you want to call it ACA, Obamacare, it's individual family plans. The same carriers that offer Medicare plans do those as well. And so I have similar tools for that. So I can, if somebody either loses their job or they're going to be self-employed, I have individual solutions for that. So I do Medicare, individual and family health solutions. And then the third one, actually, small business. I have group health insurance as well. So I've got a few here in Tarrant County where the companies, I've got one that's 13. One is over in Dallas. I can do it as small as 3. I don't know if I have any that small, but if there's a chuck in a truck that is a small individual, you have to have at least 3. I can't do it. You got to use the individual or family. But if you got 3 people and they're not employed, then a couple other criteria. Often the carrier will require that the company must pay at least 50% of the premium. And often they'll have some participation requirements like 75%. So I'm going to say if it's a company of 4. So if I got if there's a company of 4, for example, 3 of the 4 have to say, yes, I want that. And the company has to pay 50% of their premium at least. They can pay up to 100. So I do small group as well. So that's cool. Medicare, individual health, and small group health are the health insurance products I offer.
Awesome.
That's really cool. And that's good to know too, small businesses or individuals, or as we're talking about, you make the W-2 leap to being an entrepreneur for a while, you're in the self-employed space.
Exactly.
So here's the big one.
Okay, what you got,
Jordan?
This
is the big one. This is the one. This is one that Tom should spend some time on because I think this is super important.
Yeah, and this is a great one too, because I feel like a lot of people are not aware of this or don't even know this exists, right? So Medicare gives us health care, right? But there's a thing that falls into the long-term care. So I love it if you could take us about, just what is long-term care? Can you tell us a little bit about it? And, particularly the differences because we live for a long time. So there's some expenses that we're not, we're not prepared for. And we could, if we know the right products.
And the other thing is some people mistakenly think Medicare will take care of this. That's the thing. It won't. So to your point, Medicare is health-related issues. So actually, you can get home health care. So if you need a wound change or if you need some kind of intravenous medication and you're at home, Medicare Advantage, they will likely pay for a nurse to do that. But long-term care is something different. That's when if all three of us, I'm praying we live a long time and then one day we die in our sleep or maybe a car wreck. But unfortunately, typically our bodies give out in one or more ways. And it's not that we're sick, but where our bodies are just not adequate. And so we need care. And so if you cannot do any two of these 6 daily activity livings, which is you can't feed yourself, bathe yourself, groom yourself, if you can't go to the toilet by yourself, if you can't do what they call transfers, if you can't get out of a bed, or if you can't get from a table, if you have incontinence, any of two of those, or cognitive. What if you can't be left alone anymore? You're healthy as a horse, but we can't leave you alone anymore. Long-term care is what's needed. Now, I didn't know about this product when I was in corporate America either, but I've got one of these policies on myself as well. The younger you are, just like life insurance, the cheaper this is going to be.
Yep.
But you get a long-term care policy in, and so the industry-wide has established that 2 of the 6 daily activities. When your healthcare provider says this person can no longer feed themselves or bathe themselves, well, then a policy will kick in and it will pay. And so I may stop right there, but my message is everybody should have a long-term care policy, because 60% of the people that live past age 65, 70% of the people are going to need some term long-term care. So like I say, I'm hoping I die in my sleep, but it's not likely I will. So I've got a long-term care policy, but that will pay for somebody to, and there's different ways we can define it, but basically it will take care of my long-term care. So I'll stop there. You guys can ask whatever clarifying questions you have.
Yeah, so you had mentioned that it's cheaper to buy young, and I think I'm going to now validate that. If you are a young person, young couple, whatever, 30s, 20s, whatever, I would put that into your premium war chest right now, because you're going to not pay a lot of money for something you're going to need, and you're not going to think about it till you need it. And that's the problem with us, isn't it, Tom? We don't think ahead, because we think we're immortal when we're young, but that is always the best time to buy a product in the health industry, long-term care, whatever. So, yeah.
And
40% of the people actually that are on long-term care are under 65. They're
Right.
18 to 64. So yeah, unfortunately, some people need it earlier too.
Yeah.
I mean, they could, because we attribute it to aging, but accidents happen and other situations that could impact that it's just that could be completely unrelated to time. But you did mention, like similar to life insurance is better when you get young. Could you define young? Because I find that it's a very subjective term depending on the age of the people you talk to. So when would be a good time to get on it?
Well, so I'm going to say in your 30s, actually. So now most people get it in their 50s. So that, to your point, young is all relative, okay? Because when you're 30, you're not thinking about it, but I'm telling you, it's very cheap there. And there's several different ways to do this. And let me point this out. So I'm going to share you some things. I'll share with you about my own policy, for example. So I have a policy that my monthly benefit, just like how you can say in life insurance, I'm going to get $1 million, not me, but my wife will get $1 million on the policy or whatever. But so my benefit is $5,000 a month. I told my wife, she's only 5'2". I'm 6 foot tall. I said, I prefer to stay at home, but if you can't handle me, I'm okay with you putting me in some facility. But my policy, if it kicks in, it will pay $5,000 a month. Now it will only last 4 years. That's the size that I bought it, because guys statistically last 3.8 years. So I bought a 4-year policy. It'll pay $5,000, but I bought it several years ago. Just like life insurance, you can design it. I checked the little box for inflation rider. In other words, I don't think I'm going to need it till I'm in my 70s. And so I said 5,000. That's when I first bought it. Actually, every year I get a little letter and it says, you're at 52, you're at 53. So you can actually buy it. You can say, this is my benefit amount per month, and it will get bigger over time or not. That's the thing. As you might imagine, that costs more. But so I can design a policy for somebody, the number of years. My father had some kind of dementia. I don't know if he had Alzheimer's or what it is, but bottom line is, maybe in retrospect, maybe I should have gotten more, because statistically, people who have dementia, actually, they last 8 years in long-term care.
Oh, wow.
So the good news is we can size it. And so it's just a matter of, the younger you are, the smaller that monthly premium is going to be. So that's the thing. If you're a young professional in your 30s, well, buy one now. There are some that will be lifetime. You can actually there's a couple of carriers that will offer a lifetime long-term care policy. That's because statistically, it's very unlikely you're going to last 30 years. They know you're going to last about 8, but they sell it as lifetime or whatever, you know what I mean? So, so we can get whatever size you want, but the younger you are, the cheaper it's going to be.
Okay, that's good to know. I wasn't aware of that, and that's just like life insurance, right? Like, get it when you can get a good deal, and then you. What do you call it?
Yeah.
Like building into your war chest.
Well, there's certain, I call that, the name of this gig is called underwriting, right? Insurance companies base everything on mortality rates, and the higher the risk, the more you're going to pay. So when you buy young, they see you as not quite the risk. If they happen to get screwed because something happens to you, that's okay. But statistically, everything bad happens is when you get older, and so everything you have to pay the price for being at that level. And an underwriting then becomes, oh, you got to check all these boxes. Do you have thyroid? Do you have heart? Are you high cholesterol? And if you start checking those boxes off, your premium's going to be extremely high, if not unaffordable. So
and don't get it then, right? That's the thing. If you get too old, then I price this periodically. And like, no, it doesn't make sense. Every once in a while, I've had people that are higher. It's $800, over $1,000 a month. Well,
no, you're not going to do it. Yeah, you're not going to do it. And so that becomes a detriment, because if that long care, then it's going to be a family situation, and it's going to be the people around you having to bear the burden. So therein lies what you have to make a choice on.
Boy, that's the best thing you said all day, Hardy. So I'm just going to plug Walk to End Alzheimer's. That's my, we've done the walk the past couple of years at Webb Community Park. We're doing it back in the Arlington area. But my point is, you're exactly right. Really, in a certain way, long-term care is about the caregiver, just like life insurance. Really, life insurance isn't really for that person. It's for your last love letter for your loved ones, one you're leaving behind. Long-term care, it has such a negative impact on the caregiver. So it really is to protect the caregiver.
Yep, sure is.
So I have a question for you. What is the most way to say with decorum to your parents, get this so I don't have to take care of you?
Well, that's a great discussion. I don't have a canned spiel I can do, but I think to your point, that's the thing. I think the trick is or bring in a third party, bring someone like me to at least have the discussion with them and quote it. But you bring up a great point. So you got to talk to the people. I mean, this is kind of like, how do you get your parents to give up the car keys? So those are tough decisions. Those are tough.
My God.
Those are tough discussions to have, right? So I don't have a silver bullet for you, but I think to your point, it's a great thing to do for everybody involved, But that's the thing. Medicare people seem to like to talk about it because they kind of don't have any choice. They know there's an exact time at 65 and I'm coming. So people are relatively receptive to having a Medicare dialogue. They're not near as receptive to having life insurance and long-term care dialogues. But so I don't have a great answer for you other than what you said is the thing. So no, statistically, it is a female family member, one generation younger, who most often gives the care. Not always, right? But that kind of makes sense, right? In other words, typically, if there's multiple siblings, typically it's the sister, the daughter, if you will, that takes care of it. Not always the case, or it's the spouse. But it's very important to take them into consideration. It has real negative impact. Here, I guess the other thing that we'll talk about is 40% of the bankruptcies in the U.S. are kind of because of health-related, and that's either because health insurance or my point is the reason I got it. I didn't know what long-term care insurance was, but I'd saved up and how I only have one kid. I didn't want that to get drained, whether it's my wife or my kid. These events will drain your savings and or your investment vehicle. Your legacy will be eaten up by long-term care if you don't have one of these in place. That's another way to share it with them. Don't make us spend your hard-earned legacy on health, or don't make me have to quit my job. The thing, what happens is often they have to quit their job to provide it. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I've heard that happening quite a bit, actually. Yeah, very true. Yep. So yeah, right. You were getting old. Get some long-term care so you don't make me go poor. But nicely.
Yeah. Younger. I mean, tell them when they're young. The younger they are, the cheaper it is, and you're not getting any older, mom or dad.
Yeah, no, but it is great to know that that's an option. And I know a lot of us really, as we age, we don't want to be a burden, and it's great to know that you can have an option to just not be.
Have choice. That's another thing. You can choose. I said it to my wife. In theory, if you got one of these in place, you can opt to stay at home. When COVID happened, everybody went in, and people were actually even dying in those homes. Everybody came to us, I'd really like to stay at home. I don't want to go to those. If you have a long-term care policy in place, then you can choose. Okay. You can choose what happens to your care, but
wow. Really? So it could cover somebody coming into you.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You can define these. A long-term care policy can either be an indemnity, it'll pay, and there are pros and cons either, or you can have it be in reimbursement. So if somebody's already older, maybe widowed, doesn't have kids, they don't necessarily want the money coming to them because then they have to write the check. It becomes, so you can set it up either way. So it can either be you receive monies or you can be reimbursed. There are pros and cons. On the reimbursement, depending on which carrier, sometimes the reimbursement, well, they're going to reimburse up to. So in other words, what if you only spent $3,000 a month? You only get that. I kind of like it where, I set it up for $5,000 and it's going to be indebted. I'm going to get $5,000. But if I was a widower and I had one nephew or whatever, I just didn't want him to have to deal with it, I might set it up so it's going to be in reimbursement and I'd go into some facility and they would pay from there. There are pros and cons, but you can set it up either way. And or you can use it for whatever. That's the thing. Some people, I'm going to take care of you anyway. Well, then you have the indemnity come in and you can kind of pay them. You can kind of pay your caregiver that way that you can allow them to not work if they quit, because you got that. It gives you choices.
Okay. And let's really dive deep into that so we could just define it all. Because
Jordan froze up. You froze up. What happened?
Only Jordan. There you go.
Oh.
There you go. Wow. Yeah, you're back. You're fine. It happens.
Okay. I was going to ask you, what are the insurance solutions available to address long-term care? Because you've mentioned a few. So I'd love to know just kind of like what does the landscape look like?
So I'll say there's approximately 3. There is a traditional long-term care policy, which I like, and that is the most cost-effective, but it tends to be kind of a use it or lose it. That is, what if you don't need long-term care or whatever? Then you might have paid for some time, you might not end up using it. That's okay. If you get one that at least has a final expense or death component, then that wouldn't be bad. So you could potentially kind of do that. You can actually buy a permanent life insurance policy and check the long-term care rider. That's probably my preferred, even though I didn't do that. I already had a permanent policy, so I bought a standalone long-term care. But I think if no one had either, I would endorse getting the permanent life insurance policy, check the long-term care rider. That way, you've got this life insurance, which you probably need anyway. And if you need long-term care, then it can be used to address that. Otherwise, you'll have the big death benefit. Or you can kind of get, there's a kind of a combination thing. It is a long-term care policy, but it does kind of have some growth. It's not just a use it or lose it. So it can accumulate a cash back. So there's kind of 3 different ways. But at the end of the day, they're all kind of from the same companies. That's the thing. I deal with kind of I do not do property and casualty stuff. I don't do anything. I don't even have that license. I protect people, not things. But my point is, just like all the same health insurance carriers offer all those different health insurance offerings that I've talked about, the big insurance companies that they do long-term care, final expense, life, they're all kind of in there. So we can tailor a solution for people.
That's really cool. And you mentioned life insurance. So I'd love to talk about that a little bit, because that's another one that I don't think people fully understand the breadth and the usability that you can have on those. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what you offer? Because I like that you said that you can get a permanent life insurance, which I love that you can touch a little bit upon that, because not everybody knows the difference between a permanent and a term. And also, that check mark that, there's something you can click on to take care of this. Like, yes, please tell me more.
So I think you use this word spectrum. I like to use the word spectrum since I'm a recovering engineer. At the lower end of the spectrum, you can get just straight term. That's all it is. That's the most cost effective. And some people will do that because for your money, that is whatever monthly payment you're going to make. If you're making $30, $100, $500, that's where you get the most face value. So you can get just plain term insurance for a 10, 20, 15. You can do that. And so we can size a policy. You say, I'm going to spend $50 a month. What is your age? What is your state? What is your smoking status? Health conditions? Well, I don't need to know the details, but the order of magnitude, and we can get you pricing. The next level up, which I'm also a proponent of, instead of just straight term, I like it with living benefits. If you have living benefits, the implication are you don't have to wait till you pass away till your family gets that. What if you get a diagnosis? You get a pancreatic cancer diagnosis with the healthcare person's signature, and depending on how long you've been paying out, you can get a big significant percentage of the face value in advance. So there's straight term, there's term with living benefits, then there's permanent, and within permanent, there's a spectrum of there as well, where there is straight kind of legacy whole life. The implication is you don't have to worry about, because I had a cousin last year, she had a 30-year term. She got it when she was 50. When she turned 80, she's kind of lost all that money unless she continues it on. Typically, they're going to let you continue on, but the premium is going to be exorbitant to have that same, like she had like $500,000 or whatever, she's 80-year-old. So you had to seek some solution. But so my point is that's the reason you should consider permanent. As you might imagine, it costs more. Each of these costs more, but that's, again, just like Medicare, my job is to explain it to you. Get the one that you're most comfortable with. If you get the permanent one, you won't face that problem. You won't turn 80 or 90 and it'll be gone. It's there for the duration. And permanent typically have a cash value that accumulates. And some of them only accumulate a little bit. Traditional whole life would just kind of accumulate. It was a contract, just like all insurance, or a contract between the insured and this carrier. And so that was a nicety. But then they started adding features on. So now there's an indexed universal life. That's the most recent one. And so it is still for the entire life. It's permanent policy. It won't go away. It increases with cash value. But when it says index, what I like about it is you're not buying in the stock market. I actually had a variable life where some of my cash value was actually in the stock market. So the cash value, an index life is like that, yet not. You don't put any monies in the market, but the carrier, it's a contract between you and they said, we will act like it. We will pay you out annually. We'll look at what, like if you pick, you say S&P 500 or a global fund, and it'll move like that. So if the S&P 500 went up, then they will credit your account, if you will, like it performs. So I like it. So you're not really risking it, but you're getting the rewards of it. And often they'll have a floor. Sometimes they'll say 0, but you won't lose. So there's a nice effect to that. So I like building a permanent cash value like that. And so I went from straight term with living benefits, whole life, IUL, and then what I like to do, I like to add the long-term care rider on there. So there's several different riders you can do, but I like that one since I think everybody should have long-term care. So that's the thing. So $500,000, it costs across that spectrum. You can buy a $500,000 policy on those different products, but it costs more and more as you go up there. But again, we'll size it. If you went at this end and it did the long-term care policy, well, if it's going to be expensive, well, let's just get $250,000 in. So we can size it to your liking.
How do you determine the well, first I wanted to recap a little what you said, because that is really interesting. So with the indexed whole life, you get the benefits of the stock market, but you get none of the downsides.
Yes. Want to hear more about that? You're lying, Tom. No, so let me clarify that. So that's the thing. So if any of us, if we put our money in a mutual fund and it's going to behave like that mutual fund, it'll go up and down, what have you, and so be it. And mutual funds can be like an index. And so this thing, and that's the thing, I'm not a licensed financial advisor, so I don't sell any variable securities. I can't do that, but I can enroll people in these life insurance policies. And like I say, it's a contract between you and the big companies that you see advertising college football, whatever. I represent all these different companies. We'll find one for you and we'll shop it. And that's the thing. One maybe for your age bracket in your state, one may be slightly cheaper than the other. They may have slightly different, better benefits on how they do long-term care, but we shop it. But my point is, if you put that money in there, then it is a permanent life insurance policy, and there's a contract between you and those big carriers, and they say pick it. And you can pick one index, or you can pick 4 different indices, not unlike you do your 401k, but none of that money is actually going into the stock market. They're holding that money. They're doing what they're doing with it, but they say we will pay it like it's an index. So if it goes up, then we will. Your account balance will increase. And sometimes that's the thing. I'm telling you, we're getting off in the weeds, but I like the topic because some of them there's uncapped. Some of them are. You need to say something there, Hardy?
Yeah. So Tom, does that come back to you as the dividend extra? Do they pay you back that, or just reinvest it back into your permanent policy?
It's how your cash value grows. That's the thing. You
okay, got it. Yeah. So you just push it back into the policy. Okay.
But that's the thing. It's an improvement over traditional whole life. Whole life kind of behaved like a CD because it's a contract for a given rate. Yeah. Index universal life it behaves like the stock market, but they're both insurance products. But it behaves like the stock market. But they write in there and say, but we will not give a negative impact on the years that the stock market is down. So it's a fascinating. I can model those things in my insurance tools. I can model it.
Okay. And one thing I'd love you to touch upon, because I know some people that are listening to this are not going to know. What do you mean by cash value?
So on a term policy, that's just a contract that says, and those have been around since Roman times. Okay, a life insurance policy that's for term says you pay us this much each month. And if you die at any point in there, then we're going to give your family the face value. A permanent policy, as it grows, there's a cash value building in there. In theory, it can even exceed the face value, but it's there. And so my kid bought his first home, the one that graduated from Martin 4 or 5 years ago.
Mhm.
I had a $250,000 IUL, and I pulled $15,000 out, and my wife pulled $15 out because it was the maximum gift taxing, and we gave it to him for the down payment on his home. Now,
Okay.
I'm praying not, but if I have a car wreck today when I leave here, she will not get $250,000. She'll get $220. But we had access to that cash value if we needed it. So it's fascinating. So the cash can be there accumulating. So it's not just straight term. It is accumulating cash.
Yeah, and there's a funny
what happens
thing that happens with, there's a funny thing that happens with that too, right? So you pulled out the cash value. So did you do do you get the money out? Do you owe taxes on that? And did that decrease the policy?
It decreased the policy. I don't think I owe any taxes on it, or I got to refer to some CPA. I don't think I paid taxes on it, and he did it gift tax. But I can actually put it back in there potentially as well. That's the thing. It's like you're taking a loan from yourself.
So you're
So Jordan, so the cool thing about that is that let's say you bought $100,000 policy, and Tom just described it, and X amount of years you've got $50,000 cash in it, right? So if you were to borrow that $50,000 out, your death benefit just went down to $50,000. If something happens to you, if you want to pay back that $50,000 into that policy, then they would set up a loan agreement on your money back to the policy. Okay, so it's a great tool for people who won't save. That's kind of what I say. It's there if something happens to you, but it's also there if you need some cash.
Okay.
If you let it go, if you keep it long term.
And it costs more, but that's the thing.
It costs more, but it's worth it. Yeah,
exactly. And you're avoiding the problem that my cousin had about getting to be 80 and outliving your insurance policy.
Exactly. Yeah. You have something of value to get out of it, just like a home equity, right? So yeah.
That's
cool.
That's really cool. And then you can add the long-term care to that policy as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Now, but similarly, if you use that, then you're kind of going to be eating down the cash, right? But I like it because we don't know if you're going to need long-term care or not. But if we've checked it on there, at least that's an option. And that way we're not going to eat up your 401k or your whatever other savings you have. So that's the thing. But I use that spectrum. I like the end of the spectrum to me is a permanent policy, index universal life with long-term care rider.
But if that long-term rider you add to it, you would have to accumulate some cash in there before that kicks in, right? It wouldn't. No.
Believe it or not, no. Great question. So
wow.
That's the thing.
Because are you telling me they would use that base amount without it? Okay.
Yeah. So from day one, when I do this model, it says. So for one thing, what about life insurance? If you bought the life insurance, you die 1 month later, they're obligated to pay that $250K. It says by day one as well. It says day one, you're also they're guaranteeing you the $200. It's telling you there's $250,000 available for your long term care. So it could work out. So it's a beautiful.
That is incredible.
That is.
That I don't know why anybody. Well, it's not me financially.
Well, we'll just talk about it sometime. Yeah.
You know what? You're gonna get some phone calls.
Go visit Tom.
And that's the thing. I'm just going to do the illustration for you. That's what I do all day is I type in the information and I'll show you, and we'll shop it across a couple carriers too, not just one. We'll look at 2 or 3 companies and I'll show you.
Awesome.
That's
awesome.
Okay, so I know people are going to be curious about this. So they've listened to this and they look like Hurdy right now, and they're like, "Okay, I want to talk to you. Where do they go?"
So he's showing my website. So Basey-insurance.com is certainly a way to get me. Okay, so I've got that there. But I try to be available, and if you use a search engine, you'll find me too. Tom Basey or Basey Insurance, they can find me because I'm available. I like to connect with people, so I would love anybody listening. Connect with me on whichever social media channel you're on: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, X. I'm on all of them. So anyone they're on, I'm there. So I'd love to connect with them. Because that's to your point. May I get some phone calls? Maybe not. But in a year, when I got a question, I'll take questions. So just at least connect with me. And then when you think about it, then you can reach out to me. So yeah, I'm available anywhere.
Tom, thank you. Great conversation. It's hard to believe every week we say, Jordan, we've been on 1 hour and 16 minutes, and it feels like it went like that. So Tom, I hope you enjoyed today. Thank you.
I did. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm grateful for you guys for having me on.
Masterclass. Thank you.
When we end this, we're going to ask you to stay on just a few minutes past because we want to make sure the recording of your voice gets up to our server farm. So sit tight with this. So, guys, thank you for listening to Mansfield Buzz. We're on next Thursday. Beth Buckers is going to talk to us either about Cat 3 or a bunch of stuff, just so you know, Jordan. And, so we'll get this archive out to Tom. But yeah, people, if you need to come back and listen to this. There's a lot of information here. Just call Tom or get on his website and go bug him, because that's what he loves to do. And you can tell he's pretty passionate about this, and he does his research, which you're a lot like me in that sense, Tom. I'm an educator too. We like to dig into the weeds, so that's kind of a fun process for us. So, okay, everybody, we'll see you next Thursday at 2 p.m. Thanks for listening to the Mansfield Buzz, and we will see you next week. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.